This recording is one of a series intended to support you when writing your assessments for the Associate Diploma in People Management. This recording focuses on 5 HR03 Reward for Performance and Contribution. Assessments are revised on a regular basis, and this guidance is based on the June 2024 version. The last moderation window for this assessment is September 2026. This assessment contains 10 questions that assess 10 assessment criteria, also referred to as ACs. The overall word count for this assessment is 3,900 plus or minus 10%. To ensure full coverage of all ACs, this means approximately 390 words can be allocated to the answer for each AC. The extra 10% allows up to around 429 words per AC. This assessment is based on a scenario. When answering the assessment questions, you should answer each question within the context of the scenario provided. Question 1 asks you to explain the principles of reward and its importance to organisational culture and performance management. When answering this question, it's important that the principles are explained. When considering the importance of organisational culture and values, you could consider how reward strategies could encourage good performance and help to ensure that unethical behaviour is not rewarded. Remember, the scenario tells you that organisational culture and performance are currently negative. Question 2 asks you to assess the contribution of extrinsic and intrinsic rewards to improving employee contribution and sustained organisational performance. You could start by explaining what extrinsic rewards are, then assess whether these lead to improved employee contribution and sustained organisational performance. You could then move to intrinsic rewards and do the same for those. In doing so, you could also draw on motivation theory where relevant. Question 3 asks you to explain differences between types of grade and pay structures. It is not enough to explain the structures and leave the reader to work out the differences. This question asks you to explain differences. For example, you could explain how a broad graded structure differs from a narrow graded structure. Question 4 asks you to explain how contingent rewards can impact individual, team, and organisational performance. The indicative content for this AC provides many good examples of contingent pay, such as performance-related pay, competency-related pay, contribution-related pay, skill-based pay, service or tenure-based pay. It's not enough to explain what each is. You should go further and explain how your chosen examples impact individual, team, and organisational performance. All three should be covered. Question 5 asks you to explain the merits of different types of benefits offered by organisations. When answering this question, first decide which benefits you will write about. You need to explain the merits of your chosen benefits. In other words, what are the advantages? It's not enough to explain the benefit and how it works. When deciding how many benefits to write about, 3 or 4 should be sufficient. Question 6 asks you to explain the merits of different types of recognition schemes offered by organisations. When answering this question, first decide which recognition schemes you will write about. Again, 3 or 4 are likely to be sufficient. You could consider which would be suitable for Eco Insulate UK to implement. You need to explain the merits of your chosen recognition schemes. It's not enough to explain the recognition scheme and how it works. Question 7 asks you to assess the business context of the reward environment. When answering this question, you need to consider internal and external factors that make up the business context. You're asked to assess, so you should state what the factor or context is, why it has occurred, and what impact it is having. You are free to choose relevant factors, but should focus on the current business context. In question 8, you need to evaluate the most appropriate ways in which benchmarking data can be gathered and measured to develop insight. You're asked to evaluate. To do this, you should make an appraisal of the value or not of something. In this question, ways in which benchmarking data can be gathered and measured, and consider the validity, reliability, and applicability of these ways. You should decide which ways you will focus on for your evaluation. 3 or 4 should be sufficient. Question 9 asks you to explain approaches to job evaluation. You could structure your answer by first explaining formal and informal approaches to job evaluation, before moving on to explain analytical and non-analytical approaches. Finally, question 10 asks you to explain legislative requirements that impact reward practice. Potentially, this is a large answer. There are many legislative requirements. Some examples include equal pay, gender pay gap reporting, minimum wages, itemised pay statements, income tax, and CEO pay reporting. Whichever requirement you choose to explain, the explanation should be sufficiently detailed. For example, an explanation of the requirements relating to minimum wages should include current rates. Before we close, I would like to emphasise the need to apply wider reading to inform each answer and include references to reliable sources to show evidence of this reading. The sources that you cite will all be presented in a bibliography at the end of your assessment. We have now reached the end of the webinar for 5HR03. Other webinars are available for other units of the Associate Diploma in People Management. Thank you for listening.